would talk to, but I always had to start with the sentence, I'm gonna sound crazy. So did every one of these moms with injured family members. And trust me, injured family members are in this crowd. We had 117 people come to the Capitol to gain the attention of Missouri. And I got to tell you, because of the journalists dropping these documents that were delivered and finding out for us that our federal government knew this 1949 and never even told anybody in the public for almost 50 years later, that you guys sharing it with the public was huge. We already got the support of Missouri. And now today, my friends, we have to get the support of the rest of the country. Because for the first time ever, I woke up this morning not feeling crazy because our senator went out immediately on the Senate floor and demanded action. The first time an elected official has ever acted on my behalf, on their behalf, and it means something. And there's going to be a lot of need for prayer, because as people learn what happened to them, what happens is they call me every 2 weeks. I get a call from a mom of a child that has brain cancer. I get a friend that has bile duct cancer. And they ask me, could this have happened? It is not our job to prove to our federal government that the atomic bomb kills people. But every time I had to tell them that it was, I was told to commission my own scientific study. I thank you all for being here, but say some prayers. And in the end, we're going to have to gather the people that bought into the lies and the nonsense, because they're going to have to be warriors with us. This legislation is going to be a big uphill climb, and we need every one of you. You're going to have to be leaders. You're going to have to reach out to people. You're going to have to show them how to get involved. And I'd like to introduce Dawn and Karen and Kristen, because they're going to take over from here, because they've had our backs the whole time in this community.
Thank you, Representative Burns. My name is Karen Nickel. I am the co-founder of Just Moms STL. This is Dawn Chapman. She is also a co-founder of Just Moms STL. I am the creator of the Wesley Cleanville Facebook group, which has over 20,000 members. I am also the chair of the Wesley Cleanville Community Advisory Group. I would like to thank State Representatives Kristen Burns, Doug Clemens, and Rich West for hosting this press conference today, also for the work they have done on this issue. In regards to the 15,000 documents that Dawn and I have read every single page of, first and foremost, our gratitude goes to KDRIVE. K is a big reason why we are standing here today. Dawn and I are an extension of the decades of work that Kay put in long before us. Kay is the reason these documents exist. She trusted us enough to read them and get them out to all of you. For that and her legacy, we will forever be grateful. I grew up a half mile downwind from Laddie Avenue, in a neighborhood where the creek was part of our neighborhood. And there was a park in our neighborhood, Saintson Park. Some of you may be familiar, as that was a park the Army Corps cleaned up in 2015. In 2012, I learned about this issue. My parents had no idea that they moved their family into a neighborhood that was contaminated with radioactive waste from the Manhattan Project. In 2015, we learned that the park that I played in almost daily as a child was contaminated with radioactive material. We were told it was all subsurface, it was under the ground. We didn't need to be worried about it because it was all 6 inches and below. We believed that until about a year ago, when we found some documents that told us otherwise. These materials were on the surface. In 2015, when they decided to do the cleanup, they were cleaning up radioactive materials that were on the surface where kids have been playing and parents have been walking their dogs and their children, hanging out up until 2015. You may hear the Army Corps say, it's safe in its configuration, there's no immediate risk. They've been saying that since the 50s. Is that the truth?
No.
Are we learning differently from the documents?
Yes.
From a 1949 document where they were concerned about the workers cleaning out barrels that were next to the creek because it was so dangerous. They couldn't allow that to happen, but they allowed it to go into the creek. Let's just let it flow into the creek. So we will no longer accept those two statements. It is not safe in its configuration. It's not safe covered by a little grass and leaves. That's not safe. And when does it become an immediate risk? I think it became an immediate risk in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and 70s. We also hear it's historical. What's the definition of historical? Because in 2015, when we knew about the issue, I don't think that's historical.
Amen.
That is not historical. The Archdiocese property in Florissant still has radioactive materials on the surface. They have not cleaned that property. It is not fenced off. There are no warning signs. It still sits there today. I am sick. I have several autoimmune diseases. My children have suffered. My 5-year-old granddaughter was born with a mass on her ovary that had to be removed when she was 3 weeks old. We've sat in meetings where the agencies promise that we aren't currently being exposed to anything harmful. Have they read their own documents?
No.
Because these documents are the facts. Maybe it should be mandatory of every employee that works on the Manhattan Project to read these documents. My sister texted me last night. She's 50. The document that we read that said in 1984 they knew that 28 tons of soil was going into the creek. Contaminated soil in 1984, they knew. My sister texted me and said, in 1984, I was rushed to the hospital for my appendix. It wasn't my appendix, although she may have had appendix cancer because that wasn't tested back then. But come to find out that both of her ovaries at 11 years old were covered with cysts. That was unheard of back then. Girls didn't go to the OB at 11 years old. And come to find out, she wasn't the only one in our neighborhood that were covered with cysts. There were 9-year-olds. I want to thank the senator for being here, for always standing in our corner. Dawn and I have known him personally long before he became a senator. And I'm going to pass this over to Dawn to let her talk about the documents a little bit and to talk about the senator and his amazing efforts.
First of all, I want to apologize because I'm extremely emotional. These documents are awkward. And for those that have let me go, I'm crying because I needed it this morning. Because I see people in this audience right now from my community that are hurting and that might not be here in 6 months. So it's very difficult. And I see holes in this audience where people should be who are not. And I know why. I also want to thank some of the state representatives real quick. I see you. I see you. Always, not everybody that fights this battle stands in front of a podium and does it publicly. And that's very important. The other thing I want to do is thank the press real quick. I'll get on to the congressional offices and the U.S. Senator in a minute, but press, what you did with these documents, you have no idea how hard Karen and I had to pray what to do with 15,000 pages the world had never seen. Muck Rock and the AP Press. We had lots of meetings with them, but the one thing we asked and the one thing they stayed true to, just like you all, we didn't read their story until it was published. 6 a.m. we read it just like you did, because we wanted them to do what we did and read them independently and make their own decision. This is their federal government that did this to them, and they have a right to read them and digest them like human beings and write the truth. And we did not in any way want to influence that, and that was hard, let me tell you. These 15,000 documents, they're on a thumb drive, and we are doing everything we can to get them out to the public. These are through a Freedom of Information Act request, and they belong to you. But I have to tell you, we read through, we highlighted them during COVID. We did it because during COVID, nobody knew if they'd be alive in 6 months. And we couldn't be the only ones in the world that had read these. But I got to tell you, even looking over some of them yesterday and today, they are hard. My son, my family, my friends. They have timestamps on the top of them. Because we've been doing this so long, I know where those people were. Some of this was during the summer, and those kids were out there. All they had to do was reach out and say no, put a sign up. There's still no signs. So I'm going to turn it over because we need your help. We need your help. And for once, and I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to call it anything but a miracle because I believe that's what this is. We have a path forward to fix it, to get St. Louis cleaned up, and to help these people that have been exposed and to make this right. And I wish to God your government would have come up on it on its own, but it didn't. So I'm very thankful for these two people that are standing next to me in their offices, because let me tell you, they've been there the whole time. I'm going to introduce U.S. Senator Josh Hawley, but I wanted you to know I know him as Josh. And he was with us when he was Attorney General. And I got to tell you, being moms, we went down to Jeff City. There were a lot of times we met with you personally, and I remember one time I had to bring my little girl because I couldn't afford a babysitter. And his mistress was just so kind about it, and you know, never made us feel ashamed. You understood what we were doing and that we were battling, and you had our back, as did Congresswoman Cori Bush, before these documents came out. You had our back as Attorney General before you had, and we thank you. So I'm going to enter the clinic. Oh, yes, we have a clinic in our community right now that offers free screenings for people that have been exposed within 4 miles. We'll hand that out to you. We're hoping to expand it just because of U.S. Senator Josh Hawley when he was Attorney General and that settlement that's in place. So for the representatives who are going to be getting phone calls, we have a place to send people for blood work now. And let me tell you, Senator,
Thank you. I would say it's a privilege to be here, but the truth is that we shouldn't have to be here at all. We are here, let's be very clear. We're here because for 75 years now, 3/4 of a century, the federal government has poisoned the water, the soil, and the air of this community and has lied about it. Over and over and over, they've lied about it. They've lied to every member of this community. And now we know the truth because of the bravery of these women behind me and their tenacity over years and years and years. And Dawn isn't exaggerating when she says they were treated like they were crazy. I saw it with my own eyes. People said, oh, they're just activists. Oh, they're just, you know, they're all worked up. They don't know. Those are the people who weren't from here, who didn't live in this community. Listen, earlier today, I was just at Jana Elementary. I was there. I went myself because I just wanted to see it. I did not want other people hanging around and telling me I couldn't walk. I went to see it. That building, it is empty. It is derelict. And right next to it is Coldwater Creek, which we now know has been contaminated with radioactive waste for 60, 70 years since they allowed in 1949, since they set those steel drums out there with radioactive contamination and watched it wash right into that stream. generations of kids who've gone to that school, generations of St. Louis and St. Charles residents who have grown up around that creek and then moved out. They have been exposed, they have been poisoned, they have had their health and their lives robbed from them. And it's time to tell the truth. And the truth is this, is that if the federal government created this disaster, and they did, the federal government should clean it up. And you shouldn't have had to wait 3 quarters. And if I'm sorry to the news guys, I'm pounding the podium as I'm wanting to do, and I'm moving your microphones around. But I'm just getting warmed up. If the federal government has poisoned the air and the water and the soil that has made so many people sick, there is a simple and just solution. The federal government should pay the medical bills of every person who has been sick because of it. Everyone. This is not hard. It is not like it's complicated. You know, I think of what you have been through in this community just in the last year. The Department of Energy, here we are in the Department of Energy installation. In the last year alone, the Department of Energy has said there's nothing they can do. They've said it's the Army Corps' fault. They won't answer my letters. They won't respond to my entreaties. How much do you all feel who have lived here and lived through this for years and decades and had generations of family members who have been sick and ill and died, and yet your own government won't respond to you? The Army Corps. If you ask the Army Corps, when are you going to clean up Jana? When are you going to clean up Coldwater Creek? When are you going to clean up Westlake Landfill? They say, oh, there's not a problem. Go talk to the Department of Energy. It'll be done in a couple of decades. Well, I tell you what, you all have had enough of it. I've had enough of it. It's time to put a stop to this. Here's how we fix it. It is time for the federal government to authorize a fund to pay for the medical bills of every person who has gotten sick because of their negligence.
Amen.
It's that simple. This is not hard. It is simple. So I will introduce legislation on the floor of the Senate to provide funding for every member of this community. I'd just like to note it's been done before. The federal government has done this before for other victims of their nuclear program. And I'll tell you something else that I'm tired of hearing. I'm tired of hearing from the Department of Energy and the Army Corps and this government and this administration that we just don't have the resources necessary to do any more testing or to do anything for these people. You know what? We seem to have an unlimited source of money to buy and sell weapons to other countries' wars.
Amen.
But we can't do anything for anybody here. Why is it that we can spend hundreds of billions of dollars on wars overseas, but right here in this community, oh no, we just can't lift a finger. We're just too busy. We just have too much to do. Right to somebody else. So I would just say this. I would say to the Department of Energy, Secretary Granholm, whom I have spoken with on this issue, come here. This is your site. Come here. I'd be happy to show you myself. I bet Don and Karen would. I bet the members of this community. If you want to eliminate any doubt, come with me to Coldwater Creek. We'll go ourselves. We'll go right down to the creek bank. I was just there this morning. I'll take you there. I'd say the same thing to the head of the Army Corps. I would say the same thing to the President of the United States.
Amen.
This is your government, Mr. President. Come here to St. Louis and St. Charles. Come here to this region. Come talk with these people and see what they have had to endure for 75 long years. I don't know how long it will take us to get this bill through the Senate. The Senate unanimously passed legislation to clean up Jana or rebuild it just a couple of months ago. That's a good first step, but it's not enough. Now we've got to do more. Now we have got to put in place this fund to make whole every person who has been ill and who has suffered any kind of negative consequence from this. And I'll tell you, as long as it takes, as long as I am there to do it, I will fight for this in the United States Senate. I will go to the floor as long as it takes. I will hold up nominations as long as it takes. I will interrupt hearings as long as it takes until we get justice. I'll just close with this. We're really not here today for a press conference. We're really here today for a rally for justice.
That's right. Amen.
This is about basic justice for this community. This isn't a handout. This isn't the people of St. Louis and St. Charles saying we want a handout. This is the people of St. Louis and St. Charles saying we want some justice. You were badly done by. Your government asked you to bear the brunt of a nuclear program that they never owned up to and its effects. And now it's time that they gave you some basic justice for what they have done. And we will stand together and fight for it as long as it takes until we get that justice. Thank you so much for hearing me.
Amen.
so sorry she could not make it here today as she has to be in DC for votes on the NDAA. She asked me to read this statement. This report confirms what we in the community have known for decades, that for the past 75 years, the federal government actively and knowingly treated St. Louis and surrounding areas as a dumping ground for harmful and toxic radioactive waste. For years, the federal government and multiple other responsible parties continue to gaslight us and downplay the serious and often deadly health hazards that this waste carries. The federal government must not continue to allow our communities to be further collateral damage. They must not only apologize for this cruel act of negligence, but they're responsible for cleaning up this mess. Since my first day in office, I have been committed to holding them accountable and to pushing for immediate and swift action. I will continue partnering with local advocates, lawmakers, and impacted community members on legislative solutions, including an upcoming bill which would provide compensation to residents harmed by the Manhattan Project waste and assess the many chronic health conditions that are likely to result from this government negligence. We have also actively been working with the EPA and Army Corps to put up signs in Coldwater Creek. No more lives can be taken.
Amen.
Before I introduce the next representatives who have also been a huge part of this for decades, I want to say that the community stands by our United States Senator and our U.S. Congresswoman. We want these sites cleaned up swiftly. We want no cleanups done. We want the most protected levels used. We want it done within 5 years, if possible, engineering-wise. And we want the Department of Energy to foot the bill for every site. And we want them to pay for it out of their budget fund, which is not congressionally appropriated. We want them to use their fund that they already have in existence. It's the fund they built this $1 million building with. They can do it. They've done it before. They're doing it now. We want them to do it going forward. Next, I'll let Tricia.
I'd like Jay Ashcroft, our Secretary of State, to come and address you.
I'm not here because I'm Secretary of State. I'm here because these women are doing what the elected officials of this state and of this country should have done decades ago. I don't have anything to do with remediation of Superfund sites or radioactive waste. But I've seen that what's happened when I was going to the Westlake landfill meetings back when I lived in St. Louis. And I just saw that the state is not doing what it should do. So I said, at the very least, I'm going to be there so you know that there's someone at the state level, regardless of whether it's in his job description or not, who's going to stand up for the people of this state, who's going to do everything I can to support our federal leaders, the senator and the congresswoman who couldn't be here but's doing it, because together we have got to put a stop to this.
Amen.
This isn't Republican, this is Democrat, this is about the people of this state. And every one of us has seen some bill that's been passed and they said it's for the children, and it wasn't.
Right.
And children are dying and have died because the federal government has turned a blind eye. And I will do everything I can in my power to make sure that they're held accountable to that. And as long as I'm an elected official in this state, I will make sure the state of Missouri stands up and does everything we can to support individuals like this. And thank them, all of you,
Amen.
because this is happening. No offense to the senator, no offense to the congresswoman. This is happening because of good people that got involved, that were told no and wouldn't take no for an answer. And this state's going to back them up. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone, members of the press, elected officials. Thank you for being here, friends and allies I see out in the crowd. Just like Dawn said, there's a lot of us that are no longer here today. My name is Kristen Camuso. I'm a community outreach specialist from Missouri Coalition for the Environment. I have been working on this issue very closely for the last 10 years. First alongside Just Moms STL, and within the last year took this position with Coalition for the Environment. And I will say that one thing that we set out to do here was to inform the residents that are living alongside this, because in the last 10 years in our efforts, we find that we come across people that say, what? I've never heard of Coldwater Creek. The Army Corps of Engineers, I don't know who you're talking about. In fact, this last summer, we went out and we hit over 1,000 homes passing out life-saving information, at least what we believe is life-saving information. The Agency for Toxic Substance and Disease Registry came out in 2019 with a health assessment on the area, and they noted that people living along the creek have an increased risk of developing cancers that are associated with radiation exposure. And unfortunately, they came out with a list of 19 different recommendations that never left their office, it seems like. And so we took it upon ourselves to print this information, and we took it door to door. And I want you to know the pain that I felt having to walk up to somebody who was literally digging in their yard, and give them a piece of paper from the federal government that says you shouldn't be digging in your yard. It is so heartbreaking to come across people that literally now we know, because of FOIA information, because of us reaching out with Ashley Bernaw from Janet Elementary and breaking that story of the contamination, we now know a lot of the areas where there is known contamination, where the Army Corps has known this contamination has been since 2013, 14, 15, and it still sits out there on the surface. I came across a woman as I knocked on her door, who at first she said, I don't want any. I don't want to know what you got. I don't want what you're selling. And I said, are you sure, ma'am? It's about the creek. Yeah, I said, are you sure, ma'am? It's about the creek in your backyard. And she says, no, I'm fine. I got halfway down her driveway and she stopped me. And she said, wait a second. I do actually want to know what's going on in the creek behind my yard. She said, I've lived here for over 2 years and I've never even heard of the Army Corps. I never even knew that there was radiation. This last a couple months ago, we just got some documents with some maps. She literally has radiation in her backyard, and she has no idea. And I like to think that because of us, we're out here making a difference. And I hope that this summer we're going to keep out there knocking doors, and we're going to keep on until everybody living next to this knows how to protect themselves, knows how to advocate for themselves. And I ask everybody here, everybody at home, join us. You can find any information you need on our website, the Missouri Coalition for the Environment. Find me here today, please. We need your help. I also want to say before I go, this is very personal for me. I am a longtime North County resident. I have lived near Coldwater Creek. I have lived near Westlake Landfill. My family grew up just downwind of Laddie Avenue. I ate fruit from my grandmother's garden. In 2012, in an 11-month period, I had a total hysterectomy due to masses on my ovaries. I had an adrenal gland removed due to a tumor. I've had thyroid cancer. I had a gallbladder removed. And then within the next year, they found a tumor on my right adrenal gland remaining. And unfortunately, I'm still living with the consequence of all of these things. I know the burden that we are asked, I shouldn't even say asked, that we were forced to bear here. And I will do everything I can in my power until my last breath to make sure we are whole and that we are compensated and that we are restored. Our homeland is given back to us. We stepped up to save the nation, and it's time the nation step up to save us.
Amen.
I'm State Representative Doug Clemens, 72nd District. I was dragged along to a public meeting when I was 13 years old, and Kay Dry sat down next to me and asked me where I lived. And then she said, have you heard of Coldwater Creek? I said, yeah, it's in my backyard. I play in it all the time. She said, oh no, honey. And that's how I found out about where I live. I attended my first public meeting with the Army Corps of Engineers at the age of 19. That was 36 years ago. I've seen so many faces in my life disappear because of this. I've seen so many families crumble and struggle because of this. Because it's not just you get sick. These are good working folks. Middle class, we call them. And if you have brain cancer, guess what? You're not working. If you have an autoimmune, guess what? You're not working. Households, families crumble. Our whole region is injured by this psychologically, emotionally, physically. We picked this site today on purpose. Of those 15,000 pages of documents y'all have, there's a memo in there between Department of Defense and the Atomic Energy Commission discussing the location of the new processing plant. And they selected it to be placed next to the high school on purpose. They did that because they thought our enemies would never think we'd put a processing plant next to children. They thought we'd never endanger the lives of our children to build a weapon. They were wrong. We did it. And we live with the consequences today. 81 years since this has been released in our environment. 81 years. We have documents showing that they knew it was getting out in 1949. The meetings I've sat through, the things I've endured over these years. And I want to say something real quick. Can all of my elected officials in the crowd right here, all of them, will you please raise your hands right now? I want you to look around. Elected officials were lied to by these agencies the same as the general populace. Those of us that have gone through the papers, those of us that have read, done our homework, we're here because we know exactly what this situation is, despite what they've told us for years and years and years. The truth is, we're in danger today. The truth is, this is in people's backyards today. The truth is, this is in our schools, our workplaces, our homes. It's in the dust in the attics. We let it get out. They let it get out. It is the Department of Energy's waste, and they did not take care of it properly. They didn't even follow their own regulations. I want to thank our federal electeds, our senator. Thank you for being here, Josh. I appreciate you. I want to thank Cori Bush's office, and I want to thank the members of the press who did all this legwork on these documents.
Amen.
There is so much to pour through, and the proof is in the pudding. When you have a conversation with somebody in a microphone and an audience, they can say whatever they want. But scientific exams, their own data, their own internal memos, where they know, and they go to bed at night knowing that they're poisoning people in my community. I will never stop on this issue.
Amen.
Ever.
Amen.
Thank you all.
Next up, we are going to have State Representative Richard West, and he will be our last speaker, and then we'll take Q&A.
I want to start by saying thank you for everybody coming out here today. Press, this is a huge moment for me. This is my district. I proudly represent the people of this district. I'm new to this fight. My family was touched by this issue over the last 2 years. So we've had some deaths, some severe illnesses, and I attribute it directly to the waters that have been pulled from the well. But there's so much more than that. But what I really want people here to realize is, if you look at your speakers that are up here today, and you look at the people that are urging you to pay attention, this is a bipartisan effort. This isn't one side or the other. This is a region. This started in St. Louis, moved out to St. Louis County, and into St. Charles County, and it even goes into Warren County as well. This is a huge regional issue that we have to deal with on a regional basis. And I'm glad to see everybody come together. I'm glad to see all the folks on all the sides working together on this issue, because that is a very important thing for people to pay attention to. just in my district alone, which represents Southern St. Charles County, we have a myriad of cancers. I represent the Francis Hall High School right here, which is 1,000 feet away. You know, the federal government wants you to believe that they cleaned up this 1,700 acre site and pulled it all in this rock pile here, and it's all safe now. And think about that for a minute. All of it's buried up underneath there. No, what they did was they took out the topsoil, then they buried it over with clean soil and said, "Hey, it's clean. Go ahead, have a party on it," just like they did to the folks in North County. Now they can't even dig in their own yards, and we're talking about bringing people here to build more houses on top of this. So we're going to have Hazelwood and North County all over again, where people can't even dig in their yard because if you dig 6 inches down, you're in contaminated soil. We need transparency. We need the help of the public. We need the help of the press, and most certainly we need the help of our elected officials in DC, because I have to hand out to them that they've worked hard. It's been great that they've come on board, and we're now starting to address these issues. So again, thank you for coming out to my district today. Before you leave, just take a look behind me here and take into account, what they say is cleaned up. And let's move forward from here. Thank you very much.
Amen.
Senator Hawley.
Yes.
Dawn and Karen and several state representatives have called for Attorney General Bailey to take action on this issue.
Yes.
As a former Attorney General, do you have any thoughts on what he can do?
Well, listen, I would just encourage all of our elected officials in the state. I want to thank again all of the members of the legislature who are here, the Secretary of State who is here, to do whatever they can. I don't know. The answer to your question is I don't know without looking myself at the statutes, but I hope he'd be aggressive. I hope he would be aggressive, and I can just tell you, we're going to be aggressive in Washington, D.C., and I hope that for the folks who are here, I'm going to need your help in D.C. They may need to see you. They may need to see your faces.
Amen.
We may need to sit you in the gallery of the United States Senate, and as we vote, we may need to ask them to look up and say, are you going to tell these people no?
We'll be there.
Do you agree with Dawn that the
Yes, ma'am.
State
Welcome back to you.
Representative Rachel Crowder.
Yes, ma'am.
First, and I do want to take it away. I've met Dawn, and the first thing that Doug ever said to me as a representative when our district touch was about this issue. And CK Dry is certainly a rite of passage for those of us running this space. So the Laddie site that references in my district, my grandmother too, lived in a house on Patty Court in Hazelwood. I canvassed that area. My constituents in both Hazelwood and Berkeley live in that area. Hemlock, Missouri is also in my area, so there's plenty of impacted area. And that being said, gas data is sitting on a bunch of toxic waste. But my concern, not just as a parent or as a legislator, but as a teacher and kids, there I'm sure are many more schools that have toxic waste.
Yes.
Going forward on the federal level, and I'm a yes for everything you said. What I can appreciate is beyond the Twitterverse where people were kind of upset that my congresswoman was working with you, for all of the political grandstanding and slam dunks. If you're going to do something, at least bring something home for the home team. So I appreciate all that you all are doing here. But I do have concerns about other school sites and making sure that those are adequately tested.
Absolutely. We should test them all.
We should test them all.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine, and Dawn, me and her talking prior together, where when you go and you're told what your opinion is from seniors, I have been told, well, it's the way black people know the largest concentration of black women in the state of Missouri is North St. Louis County, where I have the privilege of being the state representative. It's your diet. It's the genetic makeup of black folks. We aren't even invited to these meetings, Lord bless Doug and Don, because if they didn't tell us, we wouldn't know. It's hard, when all of our family members, I am a person living with lupus. My sister behind you, Representative Dixon Clark, has survived breast cancer several times, having grown up in Florissant. We need help in North St. Louis County. Your office has always been very responsible to me, from post office issues to everything else. And I'm happy to hear you beat me to the punch and say we need to
trust all of our schools.
We do.
So,
Amen.
whatever I can do.
Senator,
This is the same line you've been told for years. They've been telling me, oh, we've tested it already. We don't need to do any more. They told me that Jana's fine. That is still members of the press, that is still their line. Is that Jana is fine. There's nothing wrong with Jana. It's all in our heads. And they've said for that reason we don't need to test anymore. We need to test every property, every school building, all in the area, all of them. Why not? This is what the federal government's there for. And I just want to emphasize again, this is not an act of nature.
Yeah.
This didn't just happen. It's not a
Amen.
storm. The federal government's negligence led to this. They need to clean it up. All of it.
Josh, why would we have the Army Corps of
Yeah.
Engineers do the testing if they were the ones that conspired to lie to us in the first place?
The question is, for those of you who didn't hear, why would we have the Army Corps do the testing when they're the ones who have been hiding this? It's a great question. Under federal law, they're the ones with the jurisdiction to do it, is the answer. Now, what I've tried to do, and Congresswoman Bush has introduced this same legislation with me on the House side. What I've tried to do is in our legislation about Jana, we just order it done, and we order the Department of Energy and the Army Corps to do it, and we don't leave it to do they want to. We order it done. But listen, I will just tell you, I don't care who does it, so long as it's done right, so long as it is given to the public and all of the findings are published. But your skepticism is absolutely warranted, and I share it 100%. Yes, ma'am.
My question is, after the test and after you find out
Yeah.
that you have cancer, whatever that might be, it's been very difficult to prove that cancer was stemmed from this toxin.
Yes.
What are we going to do to ensure that the people are able to say, yes, this is what impacted me? Because they look, you smoke, and State Rep Party said you might have some pre-existing family history. What are we going to do to prove that people have been violated and been impacted by this particular?
Great question. The question is, what happens, for those of you who couldn't hear, the question is, what happens if we stand up a medical fund, which the federal government should do, then is it on the patient, is it on the victim to have to prove it? And the answer should be no. The answer should be, if you lived in this area and you have these diseases, you get compensated. Just that easy.
Senator, can you talk a little bit more about you mentioned that you would like to start on like a fund to help people compensate the victims. Can you talk a little bit more about that and what that might entail?
Yes, so for instance, back in 1990, all the way back in 1990, the first President Bush signed legislation with a boring title. I think it was the Nuclear Remediation Act or something, but it had an important purpose. And it was for those folks in a different part of the country who were downwind of various Manhattan-era projects and experiments who developed cancer. The federal government would compensate them if they developed cancers and other diseases that were on a schedule and they lived in the area in a certain time frame. So my point is to all of the folks out there who are already saying, oh, we can't do this. Oh, it's unprecedented. Oh, it's too expensive. That's ridiculous. We've already done it. And it was the right thing to do in 1990. It's the right thing to do in 2023. So I will introduce legislation to do that for this region. And we won't make the victims come and be the bad guys where they have to say, oh, but please believe me, here's my diagnosis. This isn't like the victims shouldn't be on trial here. The federal government is on trial. They're the ones who should make this right. So what we'll do in the legislation is we'll say if you live in these areas where we know there is contaminated waste potentially there and you developed any of these diseases or conditions or illnesses, then you should be compensated by the federal government. Your bills can be paid for. Here's the thing that I just regret, and everybody's mentioned it today. It's 2023.
Yes.
They've known about this since 1949.
Yes.
And how many people have not only been ill, but died because of this? So when we talk about, in one sense, I say the federal government should make people whole, but we all know that the time to make people truly whole has passed because of the government's negligence, but they can at least do justice now. And that's, I think, what we should be fighting for.
Senator, how will you hold yourself accountable to Dawn to make sure whatever you're doing now goes forward?
She says she does a good job holding us accountable.
Yes.
Well, I'm on the record now here, so.
I apologize to the senator's staffers who pick up immediately, as do
Yes, they do.
the congresswoman's aide.
Yes.
I think what it'll take is this will be listen. This will be a heavy lift because a lot of people I can already hear it now. I can hear the voices now. A lot of people will say, "Oh, it's too expensive. Oh, we don't know if there's a link. Oh, this, that, or the other." So listen. For better or for worse, I'm not afraid to be a little confrontational. So you can like that or hate it, but we'll just leave that aside. But one thing, here's where this is good, is that if it takes me going down to the floor of the Senate day after day and demanding a vote on this legislation, I will do it. I will do. It's what we did with Jana Elementary. We did the Jana bill, and the first time I went down, somebody blocked me. And I just said, he's a nice guy, actually. I just said to him, I said, listen, I think you're going to want to do your homework here and think about these school kids who are affected. And by the time I went down the next time to demand a vote on this, nobody wanted to stand in the way. So we'll just do this as long as it takes.
Senator, I know your piece of legislation is going towards the government, but why not also these companies that will respond to this?
Great point. Great point. This is where I hope that there'll be some legal recourse. And I'm not a law enforcement officer anymore, but I hope that there'll be some legal recourse here. Mallinckrodt, who was, I think, in charge in the 1940s, early 1950s, and these documents revealed was negligent in a pharmaceutical company. We've got the Cutter, exactly, who was absolutely, they're the ones who dumped all this in the landfill and lied about it. The federal government knew about that, could have fined him, could have prosecuted him, didn't do a thing. That was in the 70s. So to the extent that there's legal liability still available under our statutes, I hope that those who have the authority to do that will bring the heat. Certainly, I'll do everything I can legislatively. And listen, the United States Senate needs to have hearings on this too. We need to lay this out. And I'm going to ask Joe Manchin, my colleague from West Virginia, who is the chairman of the Energy Committee, I'm going to say to Joe, we need to have a hearing on this. The whole country needs to know about this. And these women and those who have been affected by this community need to be given a chance to testify in public so that the world will Well, first of all, the cleanup of Coldwater Creek. I love this. The creek has been contaminated since 1949. It's 2023, and their projected cleanup effort is 2038. 2038. I was just there today myself. They're only working in one portion of the creek. So the standard's got to be, the Department of Energy and the federal government has published standards as to what constitutes radiation-free, contamination-free. This needs to meet the highest possible standards, and they need to publish their results. But I'm not gonna just take the Army Corps' word for any of it. Listen, good folks work in the Army Corps. I salute those who are trying their best, but their performance on this so far has been pathetic. I mean, it's just.
Senator.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi there. Thank you for being here. State Representative Holly Jones, District 88, St. Louis County. In 2021, my mother was diagnosed with glioblastoma, which apparently is a common theme with this sort of thing from that area. She grew up in Hazelwood, and she passed away, sadly, and died a horrible death from this disease. So I just want to go on record as saying that anyone that has passed as well should be included in these. I think it's extremely the dead as well as those living with this.
That's how it looks for workers.
Amen.
And for
All the way
veterans.
down to their grandkids.
And I just want to say something about for our veterans, for our brave men and women who serve this country in uniform and who are injured or contract diseases or illnesses in their service. It's part of our national commitment to them that we take care of them and we make that right. Well, as was said earlier, this region has been asked to serve, as it were, in a unique way in the Manhattan Project. I mean, this region was asked to bear the brunt of it. The difference is they were lied to. You were lied to for decades and decades. But the principle is the same. The federal government did it. The federal government should make it right. It's not complicated. It's really not.
Senator Don?
Yes, ma'am.
If I could ask a question, what will your legislation do for folks that want to move to wonderful communities like Florissant and Hazelwood, or want to teach at our wonderful schools but don't live here, but then would have to incur the risks of living next to radioactive waste today, tomorrow, or in the future? What will your legislation do for those folks?
Yeah, this is a great question. And this, I think, is the fact that we have got to clean up. We've got to compensate people who are ill and who have got these diseases, gotten sick, and their families. But there's no substitute for cleaning it up. And this is why the 2038 timeline for the creek, to say nothing of the Westlake landfill. By the way, can I just note as a point of personal privilege, because we've been through this on the landfill. You know, when I was Attorney General, which was not that long ago, they were telling me, oh, the EPA, they were saying, oh, listen, the contamination of the landfill is totally contained. Yeah. Totally contained. You remember that, right?
There it is.
Oh, yeah, it's totally contained. And now just last month, the EPA said, oh, oops, actually, it's not. It's spread everywhere. This has got to stop. And the whole region has to be cleaned up. It has to be cleaned up. Other questions?
Senator, is there an estimate actually about how many people have been sick? Obviously, we've seen so many different people, but is there any type of estimate or any?
I don't know the answer to that. Over 80,000 is what the Congresswoman is saying. Yeah. But we'll see if we can get you this.
Thank you.
Senator Hawley, I know you can only say so much for the current AG, but when you were Attorney General, I believe there was a settlement reached with the landfill company, and as well, you dissolved the Attorney General's Agriculture and Environmental Division. Looking back, would you have changed anything?
Oh no! In terms of what we did there, no. Listen, we held those guys accountable. There was a settlement that was going to be in place when I became Attorney General. I reopened that case, and partly in order to get the community benefits and to get them on the hook to do more. Republic is the name of the company. That was the only entity that the Attorney General's office at the time had to sue against, to get them on the hook to actually monitor and clean up. But that's not going to be enough. I mean, the truth is that the state, my predecessors who brought that suit, that was the right thing to do. But the federal government here, ultimately, they're the ones who are going to have to clean it up. The EPA has to clean it up. And if they have any doubt about it, they should just come here and see what this is. See the situation. Come to Westlake Landfill. Come to Coldwater Creek. We'd be happy to show them.
Dawn said she'd like to see the Department of Energy pay for the cleanups, them to be done in the next 5 years, at least in terms of the engineering. Is that something that you would like to see?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
My dad and my uncle both from cancer, very aggressive. And you know, they say that they try to take care of the workers, but we go through for survivor benefits. And it's ridiculous. We have paperwork that we give them, and then they still say, when I had my dad's badge, that he worked here, that no, we don't have any record that he worked here.
This was here, did you say?
Yeah, he worked. He did
right behind us. Okay, I got you.
And anything can stop us.
Of course, yeah.
So it's just that's a big thing.
Yes.
Even for the workers.
Yes.
Not the DOE fights us. They know that the DOL doesn't have that paperwork, so he couldn't work here, but he did.
Yes. That's.
We have pictures that show that they were wearing the proper.
I would say two things to that. Number one is that's completely, totally wrong. This is why we've got to go back to the question earlier about do you have to prove, some nexus between, no, I mean, the victim shouldn't have to. If you lived here, you worked here, you have these diseases, you should get compensated. But number two, I would love to work with you about this as to who's your father, did you say? Your father. Okay, we will work with you on that.
Senator Teller, there is a team that we are starting. We are starting a team working with their offices because these people are already covered under the legislation, the senator. But you're right, the burden of proof that the Department of Energy requires is so heartbreaking and unfair. And I have people that I know that with personally. So we are personally putting a team. We're pretty good at finding the right documents, and we're pretty good at applying pressure. So
I sent about 300 documents that my dad
these people need
because he kept saying if something
get with us after. Get with
Yeah.
us. We will help.
That it was safe. Yeah. He had pictures that he probably wasn't supposed to take.
Get with us
But
after. It's the same, but when you read these documents, so that goes out the window for the workers too in the documents. It does. They talk about worker. So the senator knows that too. The congresswoman knows that. They're not going to be able to deny claims any longer for workers. That's in the documents.
What's your message to your colleagues, and everyone can see that Washington today is very sharply divided. Speaker McCarthy has a narrow majority in the House. Democrats have a narrow majority in the Senate. It seems like on a daily basis things get bogged down by frankly silly things. How do you cut through that clutter?
Well, I would just say that if we can't agree that the men and women who have borne the brunt of this nation's nuclear program and who have raised their kids in these communities, just this morning I was talking with a gal who has a home right by Jan Elementary. Her backyard backs right up to the parking lot of Janet. And she was telling me that she grew up there, she raised 4 kids there, and now she's got 5 grandkids. And she said, I'm afraid to have my grandkids come out and play in my yard. Now, if we can't agree that somebody like that deserves justice, I don't know what we can agree on. And I'll just say this, Congresswoman Bush and I introduced the Jana Elementary Act Justice for Jana. It passed unanimously. It's like a miracle, unanimously in the United States Senate. All Republicans and Democrats. Eventually, we had to work on it, but eventually we got it unanimously through the Senate. I hope that this is something, when you see the reality of this, when you see the facts, I don't know how you can look these facts in the eye and look these folks in the eye and say, we should be taking action.
Senator, what went into the decision to dissolve the Environmental and Agricultural Division in the Attorney General's office?
But we didn't dissolve it, we just reconstituted it. We rearranged the office.
What division did it fall under after?
Oh gosh, you're testing my memory now. I'm older than I look. It's been a long time. No, we can get you that answer.
Okay. You've also, your state committee and your leadership pack have accepted donations from the parent company for the Cotter Corporation, from Mallinckrodt, and from our public services. Do you have any plans to give those back?
Let me look at that. That's a good question. Let me look at that. Anybody else? Okay, you bet. Yep.
One of the themes that you all touched on as you went through was sort of the unawareness in the community. You know, people who have moved in and people who just like weren't aware of the threat. For example, like one of my neighbors was unsure about whether their daughter would be able to go over just right next to here to August Bush Conservation Area, if there was any concerns about that or not on a school field trip. Other than the known sites of like Coldwater Creek and Jana Elementary, are there additional sites that are open and actively using the public and private community today that you have specific questions or concerns about? Gotcha. Appreciate it.
Well, I think that was a lot of questions to break down. Let me just give you a story, and you tell me how many questions we have to ask. Will Sharp, he will testify to this. I came into this building, and he met me here. He's running for AG. He met me here because he wanted to find out about Weldon, because not a lot of information's out there. And the employee that works for the Department of Energy walked up, did she not? And I said, can you please tell me what's in the rock pile? And she actually told us it's sealed containers of Vaseline and scrap metal. I don't think I can illustrate how many questions we have better than that story. Did I show you it says no high school parking on their lot? Because that's how close a landfill is. There's so much ridiculous stuff, and now the dialogue has to change. We have to come back and say all of that silliness, like field trips to the top of this landfill.
They have to stop.
We need to stop that. And I want you guys to go, that is ridiculous. I'm gonna stop it. If they tell you you're sick, prove it. Stop. We have to stop things just like saying that's Vaseline.
I do want to add something to that, if I may. Right now, along Coldwater Creek, where all of this radiation is still sitting, some of it on the surface, some of it below the surface, anyone can access it at any given time. There is stuff, like I said, in people's backyards. There's stuff at the Archdiocese property just sitting on the surface. It's just out there. There's no signs limiting people from getting in the creek. There's no warning signs. Other than if you maybe own the property yourself, you may get a letter saying not to dig in your yard. But aside from that, people in the neighborhood may not know if there's just common ground out there. It's just out there. So it is something that we are trying to work on. That's why we're out there trying to raise the awareness.
For Dawn or Karen, is there anything the state can do that it should be doing that it is not doing?
Well, I'm anxious to hear what Attorney General Andrew Bailey finds in his apparent investigation of the 15,000 documents that were handed to him this spring. He is the only elected official. We handed it to Allison Kite with the Missouri Independent and her team. He is the only elected official that has had these documents and has had time to review them. And for the members of press that have the thumb drive, please see us. We're going to get, you guys can have your own. Give us a minute to copy all that over and we'll get it to you. But for those that already have it, you literally can go eeny, meeny, miny, mo. They're in chronological order. Go ahead and read the thing from beginning to end. But I challenge you to pick 6 documents at random
and you'll be like, oh my God. You cannot even really hardly pick 6 at random and not find something that's mind blown. And I will say that that is why, U.S. Senator Josh Hawley, Congresswoman Bush, they had 2 hours and 6 documents. That's all it takes, because it is that black and white, it is that there. So I really would encourage him, please finish your investigation quick. It's been since this spring, and get with us. We're gonna take this last question here.
This is for everyone up here. Is there any way that we could streamline this process to get the 15,000 pages to the public? Because I know that you need help. I do know that. I would love to help with that.
The Senator
But
and
just
I were
in
just
general,
talking about that. I think we can make that happen.
I had the Department of Energy come to my neighborhood 30 years ago and test all of my neighborhood, but they would never give us that information. So I would really love to look at those documents.
We need help.
Yeah.
We're working on that. I think the people behind us are working on that. That is our goal, is to get these documents out to you guys as soon as we can. Dawn and I, you heard us talk about how long we've had them, how long we've been reading them. It's been on our mind every single day on how to do that. Guys, we tried. I want you to know that. We didn't just go to the press first. No offense to the press. We tried. We wrote so many grants, you guys, trying to get the money to fix our website to put it on. It's just us. It's just us. We just we got turned down and we got desperate because we needed to get them out to you guys. So
Can you start with the 6 documents? Yeah. It's a start to get it out to the public. Start with 6 documents.
We are definitely going to do that. We are going to start dropping them. If you are on our Facebook group, Westlake Landfill Facebook group, or Just Moms STL, we are going to start putting documents that weren't in some of these reports. We're going to start putting those documents up in the next couple days. You're going to start seeing some documents come up that, I'll just say, are pretty bad. Please understand that with help, we would love help with social media, because Facebook, although not maybe your preferred, is the easiest option for us, and it is free, and that is why we use it. It is just us. And MCE. And our coalition for the
Before you leave, have any of you heard from AG?
Just Moms has not.
Why not? Thank you. You never called me and I'm a saver.
And you passed that on the floor. You passed it on the floor. We all were there in January and we testified. And then Missouri State House of Representatives passed it unanimously. I watched it. And then it went to the Senate. And somebody dropped the ball after that. Or we wouldn't be here now. It would be already in motion. And I'm the mom here that's just saying, we need to fix this. We need to fix our own state. Step up to the plate, sir.
Thank you guys for coming. I know it's hot.
Thank you.
Again, we all thank you for your support. Thank you to the senator. Thank you to the Congresswoman.